faulty conspiracy-ish operating of the replay on the determining goal that should have tied the game up for the Wild and sent it into overtime with 33 seconds left. Crossed the freaking goal line, reviewed it, paused it where there was still a little bit of puck on the line, didn't let it play out, and they just said, okay, well, there you go. However, camera angles have popped up since thoroughly proving that the entire puck was across the line, as initially appeared to be, and it should have been a goal. Not only that, apparently, obviously, this is what I'm most fired up about. So, boom, Minnesota Wild hockey. That's our balls on fire topic. Not only that, the freaking defenseman put his hand over the puck after it bounced out of the goal and interfered with the puck, which should be a penalty shot. Refs blew it two different ways. Wild lose 5-4. They went into the third period trailing 4-0. Boo Birds were out in full force. First two periods were ugly hockey. You cannot give up 4 or 5 goals in a hockey game, let alone a playoff hockey game, and ever expect or feel that you deserved to win the game. However, the Wild came roaring back with a historic effort in the third period. They got 4 goals. It was 4-2, and then I believe it was 4-3. And then we gave up, basically scored a goal on ourselves off a face-off, a fluke goal that put it up 5-3, 5-4. Should have been tied at 4-4 then. And then the very controversial non-interference call, non-goal call with 33 seconds remaining that ultimately cost the Wild an opportunity to win the game in overtime. It did not lose the game for the Wild. Let us be clear about it. The refs blowing 2 calls on the most important play of the game at the end of the third period there is not what lost the Wild the game. It simply denied the Wild one extra opportunity to win this game that they really shouldn't have had in the first place. Like I said, you cannot give up 4 goals in the first 2 periods and expect to win a hockey game, especially in the playoffs. You can't win 5 goals. You can't give up 5 goals in a hockey game and ever expect or feel like you deserve to win the game. It's just not the case. So no matter how hard they fought in that third period and how respectable and admirable and amazing and unforgettable their effort and performance was in that third period, it still didn't mean that they deserved to win that game. So do not be too upset with the refs or how the final 33 seconds played out in that game. Yes, it should have played out differently. Yes, it did have an effect on the outcome, but it did not determine the outcome. The terrible, inexcusable play of the Minnesota Wild for the first 2 periods all the way around the team, as well as the inexcusable goal on ourselves out of the face-off that gave them the go-ahead ultimate game-winning goal. Unexcusable. Absolutely unexcusable. Now, that being said, let's get to where we go from here as a Wild fan base. So we've got a coaching situation to address, and we've got players to address. Most people feel here in Minnesota that the players we have are the players we're stuck with based off of the contracts that our GM has signed. The thing I like about how the team is run is there is a willingness and a dedication to spend money and try to have a competitive team every year. I do. You can't deny the effort. It's not a Pohlad effort where you're going, are these guys even trying to win? Are they even trying to put together a team? Why aren't they spending money? Like, it's nothing like that, okay? But the way hockey contracts are, you've got guys with 9-10-year contracts. And hockey contracts are guaranteed. You can't cut them like you can in the NFL. So when you sign somebody, you really commit to them. And unfortunately, the Wild are pretty in-deep committed. They're balls-deep committed contractually to almost everyone on this team, unless trade partners can be found throughout the rest of the league. And I believe that that is important, very, very important in this offseason, that the Wild trade anywhere between 2 to 5 notable pieces off of this team for literally whatever they can get. If it is a mid-round draft pick in the upcoming draft or in the following year's draft, so be it. If it is a current fourth line prospect, down on somebody's farm system, so be it. There are players on this team that are, I don't want to say that word. Let's think of a better word. There we go. Players on this team whose work ethic, attitude, personality, character, durability, and just production consistency or lack thereof are detrimental to this team's goals. If we want to be a team that's in the playoffs basically every year and maybe advancing to the second round, but that's it. Like, we make the playoffs, we're out in the first round or the second round every year. If we're content with being that team, then we just look for a new coach. We say it's always been the coach, the talent's here, and that's it. That's why we're keeping all these players, and that's why it hasn't worked. But you'd be lying to yourself. In my opinion, that was the biggest win for the Wild franchise this season, was not necessarily getting rid of Yeo because Yeo was bad for the team in any way. I'm not saying that. But changing the head coach position, the way the Wild did when the Wild did this season, really, in my opinion, allowed anyone with any sort of intelligence, an educated opinion, who's paying attention to the Wild season and watching, it really gave you a great idea of all the things that were going wrong that the coaching staff was responsible for, but then also all the things that were going wrong that now have proven to me these things weren't coaching issues, they're player personnel issues. So to me, the coaching's change really helped clarify which weaknesses on the team were player associated and which weaknesses on the team were coaching associated. Now, that being said, you have to hold some players on this team accountable for the failures that it has gone through this past year and a half. If you don't do that, it does not matter who you bring in as a coach. They are always going to, at some point in time, lose the team, lose the locker room. There's going to be a lack of effort, a lack of focus. And it's going to be a continual cycle. You have to send a message more than anything. This isn't about getting rid of the players who are bad necessarily. This is about sending a message to all the players who are on this team next year that you personally will be held accountable for our successes and our failures. And if you are not performing the way we expect you to at your job, you will be gone. Period. All these players on the Wild just feel immune to any consequences, any real consequences, from lack of effort or lack of production. It is really, to me, the number one thing I've got out of this whole season. So before I give you the names of the players that have to go, and then we'll look around the playoffs yet and move on to other topics, let me give you my thought on the coaching situation. Me personally, I really like Torchetti. I feel that Torchetti came in, fixed what he could and what any coach could, but still had player personnel issues that were, nothing he could do, nothing anyone could do. Okay? That being said, I love his attitude. I love his character. I think he's a great personality to coach our team here in the state of hockey, where hockey is so important to us. And I feel that he's got enough on the resume, both in other places he's been and what he did here, to warrant at least a 2-year contract, which in all reality is a 1-year trial contract, where if it doesn't work out, he'll be fired halfway through the season or at the end of the season. No big deal. But I think John Torchetti, deserves at least next year to come back as the head coach of this team, the real head coach, no interim tag, and have a legitimate shot to do what he can with this team for an entire season. Like I said, after next year, if you don't like where things are, or halfway through next year, even if you're ready to throw in the towel and things are that bad, then sure, fire Torchetti and hire somebody else. But unless you can tell me, and maybe you can because I'm not an elite hockey mind, I'm just a growing hockey mind is what I am. But unless you can tell me the name of a head coach out there that is on the level of, like, you know, a Phil Jackson or a Pat Riley or a Greg Popovich or a Bill Belichick or a Bill Cowher, you know, or John Madden, or I don't know, you know, a famous freaking successful championship can't miss coach. Unless you can give me the name of someone who is available, you know, that fits that criteria, I want Torch coming back next year to coach this team. Beyond that, it's a wait and see. You know, he totally has to earn it, anything beyond next year. But I think he's earned the opportunity to coach this team next year. And I also feel it's in the best interest of the growth and development of this team. I'm worried that a new guy will just be another starting over. And, you know, I like Torch. Sorry. Popular opinion here in Minnesota is that Torch will not be back as coach and that it will be someone new in. Whoever it is, I just want him to do good and be successful and win. It really doesn't matter to me, but I'm pulling for Torch, something about him. I like the guy. All right, so let's get to my names, or at least my top names for this week, who I feel that under any circumstances, whether you have to trade him for, you know, a half full bag of unbuttered popcorn that's stale, you know, I don't care. You got to get rid of these players next year. I will give you 3 names that are on the top of my list right now, and maybe next week I'll have another 2 or 3 to add to it, but we got to get on to other topics as we got a huge mock draft coming up here on the show. Not sure if you heard that or not, but anyway, my top 3 names that need to be traded, not necessarily in this order, and you know what, no, let's add a 4th one right there. All right, Thomas Vanek and Matt Dumba, those 2 to me are tied for the number 1 need to get those losers out of town for good players on this team. And Dumba should be tradable. Like, he's young enough and got enough size and talent and potential yet where we should not have a problem finding a team that would be willing to take him. Granted, they might not be willing to give much to get him, but we've got Riley coming in to take his spot anyway. You know, so we don't need to get a lot for him. We need to get the contract and the laziness and the inconsistency and the lack of defense and just overall fundamental team hockey out of here with Matt Dumba. Dumba has got to get out of here. Can't stand Dumba. Sorry, Matt Dumba fans. I'm sure he's a nice guy as a person. As a hockey player, he stinks, and he's not right for the Minnesota Wild. And he causes us more harm than good. So Dumba's got to go. Vanek, geez, what a giant waste of money. A guy that's supposed to be your frickin' sniper, goal-shooting, scoring machine comes here, and when he's healthy, does none of that. But usually, he's not healthy. He never plays. He's got a huge contract, makes tons of money. It's going to be almost impossible to find anyone in the league dumb enough to take him and his ridiculous contract. But he's another one that needs to move. He's absolutely detrimental to this club right now. And the other 2 names on my list are Fontaine and Zucker, guys that just, for whatever reason, they're not producing. They're inconsistent as all hell, and they don't seem to play within the team concept that we're trying to do here, or they just can't produce. You know, Zucker doesn't play within the team. Fontaine just doesn't produce. So boom, there's your 4 names: Dumba, Vanek, Zucker, and Fontaine. All 4 of those guys need to go. Get out the dough. It's right over there. Don't let the knob hit you in the butt on the way out. But if the Wild cannot get rid of at least one or two of these four